Greetings and welcome to Cosmere U. I'm Zeladrith and I'll be your instructor for today. Today's class is The Lord of the Shards. Spoiler warning, everything in the Cosmere is at risk of being spoiled here without exception, including unwritten and upcoming books, as well as several other major fantasy book series. This may sound dramatic, but I am deadly serious that this lecture is not just a theory. It is an explanation of the steps needed to understand the past and future of the Cosmere. This is the last lecture of a series. If you haven't taken both prerequisite courses, then it's impossible to conceive all the theories that go into this lecture, so please review those first. If you're inspired by puzzles and want to test your wits and innovate on your own solutions, accidentally watching this video may lose you a chance to solve the fate of the Cosmere for yourself. But don't listen to wit. Just because you didn't do it first doesn't mean it doesn't have value. So if you want to leave the lecture hall, this is your final warning. But for the doubtful or for those who just want to know, here are the spoilers we will cover. We'll start by talking about how the diagram can be changed, moving into discovering that there is no god in the Cosmere, the gap rule for cleaving shards, Nightblood's hypothesized identity, some theories on the 5 scholars, numerous and successively theoretical theories, who the 17th shard is, and an attempted clearing of the 3 gates. Before we begin, I want to start off by saying that a theory that has not yet been disproven is neither true nor false. It is in a state of quantum superposition of being both, at least until Brandon Sanderson publishes a book that disproves it. This is because by predicting the future, we alter it. Brandon Sanderson reads our fan theories, and that in turn influences and changes the words he writes until it is published or set in metal. So with open mind, let me present some possible theories, possible futures, which will in turn change the storyline of the Cosmere. To read the wheel, let's start from autonomy, the logical starting point. Then read the shards out in command pairs. Here you're going to notice that the cycle repeats itself, perfect and unbroken, without ever touching a change rule. At some point though, Odium, most likely with help from the others, broke the cycle, resulting in Dominion and Devotion splintering. Since the intermediate shards of Sanctuary and Providence can never be reformed, by basic logic this means there is no Sanctuary, there is no Providence, implying there is no god in the Cosmere anymore. Adonalsium was shattered. However, as covered before, I do believe in the god beyond the Cosmere, the author. Anyway, losing 2 shards breaks the stability of the cycle because the gap in the shard order triggers the gap rule. I theorized that a gap of 1 makes you apply the next 2 shards over their following 2 shards instead. So I read this as autonomy inspires blank and preservation to conceive reason plus whimsy. Because it's 2 shard slices of space from inspire to the end of the next shard, you apply the command on the 2 shards following that. This means wit was born when devotion was shattered. Quantum superposition. Until we reach that point in the cycle, it's also indeterminate which state that wit will be in. As shards 17 and 18, he can choose to be in either spot, allowing him to alter the wheel's parity as he wills it. Let's say that he stays as a single slice as shown. Then this causes the gap rule, change and exist. So going even deeper into the realm of theory, but I think that change rules might force reflection across the circle to the other side, and both copies and redirects the commands to those shards. In this case, because of the gap rule, this would actually reflect 4 shards across the circle. Spots 18 and 13 are splintered and would have no effect when applied, but invention is manifested into mercy, and virtuosity is manifested into valor with the help of endowment, creating euthanasia and heroism. So euthanasia is made up of a mercy invention, who I like to call Nightblood. So I don't know if Nightblood is simply a piece of euthanasia or the entire shard, but it would both make sense and be truly horrifying for this to be the case. I imagine the goal was probably to invent a weapon, to destroy Ruin and Odium by granting them salvation, but mercy alone was not sufficient. Knowing what we know about Nightblood's creators, this means that Vasher is valor returned, and Shishara is virtuosity returned. Their shardic numbers do line up. This is most likely because when shards splintered, they have to go somewhere. They come back as returned on Nalthis, as their shardic intent is so strong they cannot leave the Cosmere into the beyond. So since their intent needs a place to go, I guess Nalthis is the closest place to the beyond. So this builds on the theory that the 5 scholars were all returned shards. The 5 scholars would be Yestiel as reason, Arstiel as whimsy, Shishara as virtuosity, Denth as invention, Vasher as valor, but that's all just guesswork. So let's move on to the decay of ambition. Wit only has splintered shards around him, so he can no longer impact anything directly anymore. So at this point, every cycle, endowment slowly changes ambition, Odium slowly changes honor, but ambition was the first to go. But instead of splintering normally, something other may have influenced an accident occurring. Accident. Similar to wit, accident can choose to be in either position 5 or 6, probably completely by random. Thank you, change, change. Luckily, at this time, instead of cultivation and ruin conceiving retribution, accident had a gap, and instead accident managed to manifest ruin into preservation, creating harmony. But there still wasn't determinism in the cycle. So while this sort of stabilized things, accident's ability to cause issues exceeds even that of wit, probably because it's also in the change quadrant. And so it was, another accident happened, inspiring cultivation to conceive Odium changing honor, pulling it into Odium, creating retribution. So now, while we're at a steady state in the world, the ball is in Retribution's court to make the next move, but every move is bad for him. Also, I was pretty much just theorizing based on what sounds like it might make the story work, so at this point all the rules are kind of out the window. But next, I think that someone is going to use exist to split harmony back into ruin and preservation. And this means that in the next accident cycle, accident has a good chance of pulling ruin back onto cultivation, which will manifest fate, who seems pretty much like a final boss. And after this, by accident, fate would consume retribution in order to form nemesis, and at this point everyone is doomed. But actually, it turns out that retribution saw this in advance. Teravangian saves the day. Having read the diagram properly, he reveals that he always predicted that this would happen, and did everything to get to this position so that he can sacrifice himself to trigger the merging of euthanasia into heroism, which will form the arc. So everyone's going to get away into a big spaceship made of innovation and salvation combined, and sail it into the beyond to escape the nemesis, perhaps saving others along the way. But that's just one way things can go. But rewinding all the way back to when Wit first formed, something is kind of fishy here. Why is Wit shard number 17? No one else gained numbers after merging, and that's when I realized there's an awful lot of things happening around the number 17. So one explanation is that merging shards could naturally add your numbers up, but 1 plus 2 does not make 17. And let's say retribution formed like 19 or something, but then it would move into the cognitive quadrant because the shardic numbers have to be in order. So let's see where 17 manifests in the books. Here are a bunch of Wit's possible identities, using his powers as a light weaver to either pretend to be someone or to actually be that person in the story. But some surprising ones are like the Sunmaker himself, Uskri in the story, or pretending to be Adrotagia with the light weaving. And some of the weirder ones are that Navani's father may have been Wit, which is made especially weird by how well, let's not go there. But I suppose someone has to fulfill the Game of Thrones prophecy. But an even bigger realization is that Wendell was sent by Wit. Wendell tells us that Lift was chosen by the ring. Wit controls the ring. And where have we seen the One of Rings, the Lord of the Rings? Of course. If you check the history of Sauron, you can see that he's a master of deception, making everyone think that he's the good guy. But the name Wit never really made sense between providence and innovation in the round of 8. Wit might actually be a literal 17th shard called Order or something like that. Order or command, combined with whimsy, since a command of whimsy is a ready wit. So reason might still be out there hiding somewhere. But if Wit is Sauron, how is he going to find the ring he seeks? I think that Lift, like Frodo, was chosen by the ring and will set off on a journey to collect the 4 Dawn Shards. Just like Frodo, Lift cannot easily be changed, which makes her the perfect person to resist the temptation of the One Ring. But what is the identity of the One Ring? So if you look back from the Books of Swords at Coin Spinner, it acts just like the ring. It has a will of its own. Mindblade, granting control over others, that definitely describes the One Ring. And if you look at the 4 constituent parts of these 2 swords, it's clear that we get the 4 quadrants. Mind is conceiving identity. Blade is existing investiture. Coin is changing fortune. Spinner is inspiring connection. So Mind, Blade, Coin, Spinner would form a command, the ultimate master Dawn Shard command of order, or command. So if you combine all the Dawn Shards, you would get command as a verb. The master Dawn Shard command, supreme power over all commands and shards. If Hoid is the 17th shard, it also explains why he cannot directly interact with things. He can only command others to act on his behalf. So we know Ready Player One has exactly 3 gates. When I looked at the Cosmere logo, I recognized similarities to the 3 Deathly Hallows from Harry Potter, where each symbol represents one of the 3 concepts of power that help you avoid death. The 3 oaths of the first ideal bind these Deathly Hallows. The Elder Wand grants death, but we should value life. The Cloak lets you flee in weakness, but we should value strength. The Stone lets you change ultimate destination, but we should value the journey instead. So next, what in the Cosmere maps to these 3 things, each with power over death? The circle here represents the diagram of the 16 shards merged into order, which bring the returned back from the edge of the beyond and don't let them escape, just like the Resurrection Stone. The star is formed by Coin Spinner and Mindblade, or the 4 Dawn Shards combined into the Master Command Dawn Shard. But what are the arcs on the outside? Let's look at the other rules of 3 to find out. The lion, the witch, and the wardrobe kind of match these concepts, the 3 Silmarils of the sky, the sea, and the earth. But just what are these symbols? So if you remember the Books of Magic, the Trenchcoat Brigade teaches Tim about the world in 4 domains. In that analogy, based on how they act, the 17th Shard faction probably represents the original Trenchcoat Brigade. They have some relation to Hoid, but they aren't doing much. However, I think each of the 4 arcs represents the story arc of a different Voidbringer, representing the cult of Cold Flame, trying to stop Hoid. First, the Steel Inquisitors as the Murdral of the Wheel of Time. Then, Lifeless represent the White Walkers of A Song of Ice and Fire, and since they come from the north, I rotated my wheel counterclockwise by 90 degrees. The Fused represent the Tlan Imas of Malazan, and the Night Brigade represent the Ring Wraiths from Lord of the Rings, trying to collect all the Dawn Shards to reforge the One Ring, the One Command to the south. So now that we have cleared the 3 gates, found the 3 Deathly Hallows, and collected the 3 Silmarils, what is next? So here was an interesting image implying that there's more beyond the known Cosmere. This seems to most closely match the concept of foundation, where you have a station overseeing and guiding the Cosmere along its course, but a second, even more terminal station guiding that one in secret. In this analogy, Mule would be Wit, who single-handedly changes everything. The Foundation is probably the 17th Shard faction who failed to contain him, and Silverlight is likely the second Foundation that will eventually be forced to step in. Whew, that was a lot, but there's just one thing left. It's your turn. Continue the investigation. There's still plenty to figure out and solve, like future book titles and their relations. You can come up with new theories from all this new info. Continue to prove, disprove, and leave comments in my findings. See all of you at Dragonsteel Nexus 2026. This has been your instructor, Zeladrith. That's all for today's lesson. Class dismissed.